The food industry is marketing heavily to the kids. This is a must. This is the best. This is in the commercials. The other kids are watching those commercials. Everyone wants it. But it's very important that when we give food to our children, we let them know that the reason we give them this food and not the other food is because it is special. And they are special. And they deserve the best. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Good Gut Feeling podcast, where we digest modern medicine with old world wisdom. And today we're going to talk about such a relevant topic for anyone with kids, who wants kids, anyone that has anything to do with children. This is a must listen to. But before we jump right in to today's topic, this topic is so important because it really affects the next generation. How do we keep our kids healthy? These days, it is so hard to know what's real and what's not real. Information is so available, but we don't know what is real and what is not real. And unfortunately, children's chronic illnesses, along with adult chronic illnesses, are on the rise. And almost 20% of children and adolescents are on chronic medications they will likely take for the rest of their lives. Most chronic diseases are up in children. Obesity, diabetes, diseases we've never even heard of before, except in older people and debilitated people. We are now seeing it in kids. ADHD is on the rise. Many chronic diseases are on the rise. Kids are more medicated than ever. But why? And more importantly, what can we do about it? We're now hearing a lot about Kellogg's and Fruit Loops. Fruit Loops used to be called Fruit loops. That's how it was when I was a kid. Now it's Fruit loops. Why? Because Kellogg's was sued because they actually had no Fruit in their Fruit Loops. But they did have a whole bunch of preservatives and very toxic chemicals, in particular BHT. BHT is a chemical that's actually banned in the EU, in the United Kingdom, and in Japan, but here we use it widely. And it's been linked to cancers, to endocrine disruption, to toxicity to the liver and kidney. In fact, the United States has some of the most lax regulations when it comes to food. Genetically modified foods are outlawed in some countries. In the United States, they are currently have to be labeled as genetically modified. However, there is a trend moving away from that, and there are people who actually want to remove that certification, if you will, that labeling of genetically modified products. What does that mean for us? That means we have to be very careful. With children, we have to be very careful because anything that goes into a body of a small person who is developing, who has not fully developed, is going to affect them more. One, because they're smaller, but two, because they're developing. And the earlier it happens in their body, the earlier it happens in their development, the more potential harm it can do. We're starting with food. Food is unfortunately not the only culprit, but a major culprit, because kids are eating ultra processed foods and highly artificial candy and food that's not even food. And they are the ones that actually can be affected by it much worse than even adults, even though it's not good for anyone. But kids with a developing brain and a developing immune system, developing microbiome, to give them food many would not even consider food, that's ultra processed chemicals that are highly toxic, can affect a little body in a major way. So what do we do? Because I speak to parents a lot, and I do get a lot of pushback because, okay, they know that they're not supposed to eat like that, but it's harder with the kids because of school and friends and parties. There is a way. And it's important to start early because many parents feel that the kid will be deprived if they don't get a certain kind of food, or they don't get the yummy candies or the cupcakes or cakes or treats or whatever it is, if their friends are eating it. And because they feel like that, they either feel bad by giving the kid good food, or they allow the kid to eat junk. There is a place for food that is tasty for kids, But food that has chemicals is not food. Chemicals are not food. You can give them some sweet foods, and there's ways to eat sweet foods in a healthy way, but these ultra-processed, highly sugary foods that cause insulin resistance, that cause diabetes in children, that cause all kinds of inflammatory conditions from the head to the toe are not food. So how do we do it? Because we do know that most of our friends and neighbors, classmates, don't know this information. So they, the teacher in school may give kids food and maybe in their lunch at school. How do we deal with that? First of all, it starts early, and it starts with marketing. We market the food properly because the food industry is marketing heavily to the kids. This is a must. This is the best. This is in the commercials. The other kids are watching those commercials. Everyone wants it. But it's very important that when we give food to our children, we let them know that the reason we give them this food and not the other food is because it is special, and they are special, and they deserve the best. They deserve food that is healthy because we love them. And the healthy food is no less delicious than junk. It's delicious, it's healthy, and it's different, not because they're weird and not because they're deprived, but because they are special. Remember, if the corporations in the food industry can market their way, we can market in a way that creates health for the child. So do your research. Not all kids' food in the supermarket should be given to kids or people at all. Number 2, very important point for children is particularly medications and particularly antibiotics. So many children have some kind of infections, ear infections, throat infections. We know kids sometimes get sick. Should they be given antibiotics? First of all, antibiotics are highly overprescribed. For one reason is that many doctors feel that when a patient comes to them and they have some kind of infectious process, even if it is a virus, then they feel they need to respond by giving the patient some kind of tool. Now, I'm going to tell you that antibiotics don't cure viral infections. Viral infections don't respond to antibiotics. Antibiotics have nothing to do with viruses. Antibiotics typically work for bacterial infections. And many infections are actually not bacterial, they're actually viral. So why does a doctor give a patient antibiotics for a virus? Because the doctor feels the patient needs it. And sometimes the patient does, because people sometimes feel, okay, I went to the doctor for the doctor to tell me, okay, write it out, drink water and go to sleep. I could have done that at home. Why did I come to the doctor if I'm not going to get a prescription? That is an important point. Because of that, many times antibiotics are overprescribed. That's completely unnecessary antibiotics. Then there's the second option for antibiotics, that they can be used. For example, certain infections, they may decrease the time of the infection by 1 day, or they may prevent a very rare complication of that infection. So we always need to ask, what happens if I don't take the antibiotic? What is the risk? How common is the risk? Because taking antibiotics depletes the microbiome. The microbiome is responsible for health, for the immune system, for almost every aspect of health in a body, especially a growing body, especially in a growing body that isn't fully developed. And there are studies that have shown that children who take frequent antibiotics are more likely to get certain autoimmune diseases because their immune system has not yet fully developed. So now we are giving them antibiotics. We are killing the bad bugs, but we're also killing the good bugs in their microbiome. They are not fully developed. The immune system is not fully developed. And now we're not really giving it the right support in order to develop a healthy immune system. So with antibiotics in particular, because we see that a lot, always ask, is it necessary? Is it helpful? And what happens if I don't take it? And this applies for any pharmaceutical agent. Always ask questions. Don't assume anyone knows better than you. And you deserve to be given an answer. You don't just deserve to be given a prescription with no explanation. You deserve an answer because everything that you take, even supplements, even pills, any type of, even some foods, there may be a benefit and there may be a risk. And you have the right to know what the benefits and risks are in order to make an educated decision for your child. And a third way to keep our kids both mentally and physically healthy is to limit screen time. Screen time has negative effects on us as adults, but on a growing brain, they have more deleterious effects. Many kids have trouble paying attention in school, and the rise of ADHD is going up. Many kids are on medications for ADD and ADHD. Why is that? Is it because it was just not diagnosed before, or is it actually growing? And I think it could be both. There's definitely a rise in ADHD. Is it because of food? Is it because of the educational system? Because there are just kids that are out of the box. They are creative. They are smart. And then when we ask them, can they focus on the things they're interested in? I see these kids, they're artistic. They love art. Can you focus on art? I ask them, yeah, I can focus on art for hours, but I just can't focus on English and I can't focus on math. Well, maybe that is not where they're headed. They're a creative child. They're an out of the box child. Their brain needs to be stimulated in a special way. And it's important for teachers to recognize that not everybody's in the box. And if someone's out of the box and they can't pay attention to a subject that they're really bored with, then maybe it's time to change the educational system and not medicate the child. I'm certainly not saying there's no appropriate use of pharmaceuticals for ADHD, but they're highly overprescribed. So does your kid really need it? I think it's first time to ask all these other questions. Number one, can my kid pay attention to things he's interested in? Are there different topics that he's interested in? Is it really his brain, or is it that the combination of the educational system? Maybe my kid needs a different curriculum and not a pill. Maybe my kid needs a better diet. How can I introduce a better diet? Well, it applies in the same way as adults. Whole foods, healthy foods, clean foods, foods that look like they belong in nature. So if you're going to get a chicken, and it should look like a chicken, not a chicken McNugget. Chicken McNugget is chicken byproducts with lots of ultra processed food additives and preservatives and chemicals. But if you get a healthy, free range chicken, that's a different product. If you give the kid vegetables, healthy, organic, cooked or raw vegetables, that has a lot of value. But kids who are eating French fries or foods made in seed oils, it's not the same thing. They're not building their microbiome the same way. They're getting all sorts of inflammatory foods that are disrupting their normal development. Remember, kids, everything that applies to us applies to kids, but even more. So with kids, we have to be ultra careful, even though it's much harder. It's much harder. We can't control them sometimes. Sometimes, we can suggest, but at the end of the day, we cannot control every moment. But it's very important that we are vigilant from day one. And if you haven't started at day one and it's year 5, it's never too late. It takes a little extra work, but it can all be done. And we can keep our kids healthy and safe. Stay healthy, stay gutsy. I look forward to seeing you all next week.